I'm not using the word prove in any of these discussions about the arguments for the existence of God. We're not trying to prove God's existence, but we're trying to show that the likelihood is really high given all the evidence that we have in science, in philosophy, and in history. The word prove is a tough word for anybody to get around, but the likelihood is really high. And it's a cumulative case. Last week we talked about argument for the existence of God from cosmology. Who remembers the syllogism for that? Anybody? No, Jacob's hand down. Josh.
Anything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause.
Exactly. Yeah, good job. And Jonathan.
Can you define syllogism?
Syllogism, yeah. Syllogism is a logical construct that has two or more premises and a conclusion. So it's a way that we all think, but sometimes in discussions like this, if we actually put it in that way, then everyone can get on the same page. Yep. Yeah, good point. And I'm going to introduce another syllogism tonight as well. Just a comment. Justin's taking classes right now, online classes from Reasonable Faith, which is Dr. William Lane Craig's organization. And that syllogism was really coined in contemporary philosophy by Dr. William Lane Craig. So good stuff. I saw you raise your hand, so I know you've seen it before. But that was last week. I will review just a little bit, and then we can get started. This week, it's real personal for me because I love nature. I love the outdoors, and probably some of you are in the same spot, right? Like to get your hands dirty, you like to hike, you like to see the stars. And the more that I know God, last week we talked about our ability as humans to apprehend God. In other words, like, hey, the universe had a beginning. We know that beginnings must have causes, therefore the universe has a cause. But what is this cause? We're going to see more of that apprehension tonight. But it's the comprehension that keeps my brain going. And you might be in the same place. Like, what is this great being? And we call the biblical God. Some of us do. Most of us do. And the comprehension is something that as finite and fallible humans will always struggle with, right? But when I see the stars, my mind just goes, right? Like, how did God manage all this? And how does he manage it today? Keep them all in their planetary motions using gravity the way he designed it. The other day I was on my back patio and I saw a tree right next to another tree. And they were too close together. And yet one tree was sensing the closeness of the other tree and was moving away from it. Now, it doesn't have a mind like we know a mind. Does it have a sensor that it senses there's another tree? Maybe. God designed that. How did he design it? And why did he design it in the way that he did? You know? So my mind just goes like that. Can anyone else relate to that? Yeah, I mean, when you know that God's creation or God's creative ability, his juices have done all of this, I think it just sends your mind in those kind of directions. So that's the space we're going to be in tonight, is more about God's design. And of course, we're in good company because people have been wondering not only why is there something rather than nothing, but why does it operate the way that it does for millennia, right? So we're still in that same company. And in fact, in the last 100 years, we've learned so much that atheists continue to be convinced to become theists. Antony Flew is a great example. And some others that I'll talk about, for example, Francis Collins. Because you see what you see and you can't deny it anymore. All right? So we'll talk a little bit more about that tonight. If anyone here has a materialistic worldview, I wouldn't blame you because that's kind of what you've been taught in school. But I would just ask you, as I talked about last week, keep that presupposition to the side and keep an open mind to the things that we're going to talk about. But we're happy to take any questions and challenges that you might have along the way. So here's our agenda. I'm going to talk about intelligent design and then fine-tuning. We'll do some QA discussion and resources. So let me open with a prayer. Heavenly Father, we are so grateful this evening that we can accelerate our learning about your amazing creation and what it says about you. In your Son, Jesus' name, amen. So the teleological argument is all about design and purpose, and it comes from the Greek word teos, T-E-L-O-S, which means design. And before we get there, though, sorry, I do want to review a little bit from last week, particularly some weren't there. We heard the syllogism already, all right? But from the syllogism, we determined that certain characteristics of that cause are reasonable to consider, right? In other words, we have a cause, but what are characteristics of that cause? And here's the list that we came up with. Volitional, okay, the cause needed to make a decision to create, right? Personal, the cause created people, humans. Now we would say as Christians, we're made in God's image, but even if you deny that, we're obviously made in such a way that we can apprehend and partially comprehend. So that's a being that wants to have a personal relationship with us. So I think it's reasonable to say this cause is personal, all right? Self-evident, that kind of is contained in the syllogism. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. That's self-evident. The universe had a beginning. Spaceless, timeless, meaning outside time, and immaterial. Einstein's theory, which has been proven now to 5 decimal places, at least currently, shows that space-time and matter had a beginning. So whatever created space-time and matter had to be outside of space-time and matter. We also talked about this being, this cause, would be infinite without limitation. In other words, it's reasonable to believe that this cause is infinite without limitations based on what it's done. Okay? Eternal. Otherwise, we have an infinite regresses of causes, right? Like what caused the uncaused cause? Well, another cause, and what caused that cause? And that would be an infinite regress, which is impossible, right? There's no such thing. So eternal, immutable. If you're eternal, you can't change into anything else because there's nothing else to change into if you're eternal and infinite. And there's no cause to change you into anything if you are infinite and eternal. So immutability would be another characteristic. And the final one we came up with was powerful. Okay. We also talked about intelligent. We'll leave that for tonight, but certainly very powerful. So that's what we're looking at so far in terms of the existence of God. Is this fully God? Well, this is partially God, what we would know as Christians, but we're going to add to this list tonight. Make sense? All right. Here's your new syllogism. Whoa. Every design has a designer. Okay, pretty easy. The universe and biological life show highly complex design. Therefore, the universe and biological life have a designer. So to Jonathan's point, I'm making 2 assertions. We're going to back that up tonight, and that's the obvious logical conclusion that the universe and biological life have a designer. All right? Let me just stop here. Any questions or any thoughts on that? Just know that the majority of my time is going to be right here. Okay? But I'll start here. Does anyone have any opposition to premise 1? Every design has a designer. We'll talk about the word design in a minute, too. All right, let me get to that. All right, then I'll move on. And I normally don't do this, but My background is not science. It's business, it's marketing, it's sales, it's entrepreneurship. And so I want to allow a couple PhD scientists to speak tonight to us about biology and about fine-tuning. So I'm going to play 10 minutes of a video, and then later on I'm going to play 6 minutes of a video. Okay, I'm not going to kill you with videos, but enough to kind of whet the appetite, and then we can talk about it a bit. The first video I want to play is this one from Michael Behe. Okay, Behe, some of you have heard of him, maybe. He's a professor of biological sciences at Lehigh University in Pennsylvania. He's a senior fellow at Discovery Institute Center for Science and Culture. He received his PhD in biochemistry from the University of Pennsylvania. He's authored over 40 technical papers and 3 books. His latest book is Darwin Devolves, presenting new research that offers a startling reconsideration of the Darwinian mechanism. Today, let's watch 10 minutes from a 30-minute video. Okay, I'll put the link in our group meet if you want to watch the full thing later on your own time, but the first 10 minutes is going to make my point. All right, let's see if it works.
Machines, they enable us to be creative and produce spectacular structures. We also find magnificent structures in nature, and each of these living structures was also built by machines. Machines that are far more elaborate than anything that humans have ever built. In fact, this log is currently being decomposed by tiny fungi that are vastly more complex than this drone. I'm Mike Behe. Welcome to the unseen world of organic micro-machines. Every living thing in the world is made of cells. Microbes are single-celled organisms. Advanced life forms have trillions of cells. Inside a cell is a bustling operation of interconnected molecular machinery so sophisticated it would put any modern high-tech factory to shame. This intricate machinery is what gives the cell its remarkable abilities to process energy, execute genetic instructions, and replicate, all with unbelievable efficiency. I'm a biochemist, a scientist who studies the molecules of life. There's never been a more exciting time to be a life scientist. This is a golden age of discovery in molecular biology. Stunning breakthroughs in our understanding of the most fundamental unit of life, the cell, have been coming faster and faster. My own view of the cell took a turn years ago. I was in the lab at the National Institutes of Health doing postdoctoral research. I was discussing the origin of life with a fellow postdoc. As she and I thought about the cell, we wondered how could its complex membrane, proteins, metabolism, genetic code, how could all that have formed by the accumulation of undirected changes? So we were both sort of stunned by the notion, but then we just laughed it off. We figured that even if we didn't know the answer, somebody must know. Well, in the 10 years after that, I didn't come across any science publications that adequately answered the nagging question, exactly how did the cell get to be so complex? Everything I read presumed that those biological mysteries would eventually be solved by Darwin's theory of evolution. Being an evolutionist myself, that was fine with me. Then I came across a book titled Evolution: A Theory in Crisis by a geneticist, Michael Denton. It addressed profound problems with Darwin's theory. It asked hard questions about the origin of life. And it showed that science didn't have the answers. No matter that everyone assumed it did, or assumed that it would eventually, or something. I was flabbergasted by the book. I began to look at biology with a fresh set of eyes. And I started asking questions. Lots of questions. That's what this series is about, asking questions. Not about the why or when, but about the how of biological origins. As I said, there's never been a more exciting and fun time to be a biologist. So I'm really looking forward to jumping into this series, and I hope you'll join me. We all love cars for their beauty and performance. But except for guys like these, not everyone really understands what's inside. Is this what you're looking for?
Not even close. You could stand over there.
Oh, okay, I'll just stand over here. In a way, cell biologists are like auto mechanics. Each cell has an astonishing number of intricate parts, way more than any car. We study what the parts are, how the parts work together, and even which parts of the cell can be left out without causing too much harm. If you understand the inner workings of the cell, you can understand a lot about all living things. What makes them thrive, what makes them fail, and what causes them to evolve. We'll cover more about that later. Right now, I want to look at the topic of complexity. We and I are made of about 40 trillion cells. They comprise every part of our complex human anatomy. But the truth is that we can reduce the number of parts and still have function. If we lost an eye, an ear, or a hand, it would be very unfortunate, but our lives can go on. The same applies to this rather complex drill. It has some cool add-ons, but I could take off this battery gauge, or this LED light, or a few other gadgets, and I'd still have a working drill. But how far can I reduce its complexity and not ruin it? I don't want to take apart my drill, so let me move to another example, this mousetrap. The complexity of this machine entails 5 parts: the platform, the spring, the hammer, the holding bar, and the catch. Now if I reduce the number of parts from 5 to 4, if I take away the holding bar, or the spring, or any other part, it wouldn't work. Every part is essential. I call this irreducible complexity. So does this apply to biology too? Do we have examples of irreducible complexity in life? Try this one. Here's a bacterium, a single-cell microbe. Some bacteria have a flagellum, which is like an outboard motor on a boat. It rotates to propel bacteria through liquid, and it's necessary for their survival in order to swim to search for food. A flagellum has a number of parts: a drive shaft, a universal joint, a rotor, bushings, stator, even a clutch and braking system. The motor of the flagellum has been clocked at 100,000 revolutions per minute. And as with the mousetrap, removing even one component of this elegant machine destroys its function and renders the bacterium, shall we say, dead in the water. The flagellum is irreducibly complex. Now we know that this was assembled in a factory, but how is the bacterial flagellum developed in nature? Keep in mind, the flagellum is irreducibly complex. All the parts have to be in place, or it does not work. Could it have been developed blindly, in stages? Let's say in the distant past, the bacteria first gained a drive shaft. Later on, a rotor, then a stator, and then the rest. Then the parts got in sync as a high-performance engine. The theory of evolution tells us that given enough time, any organic structure we see today, no matter how complex, could have slowly and fully developed by random, unguided forces. We'll come back to the topic of complexity in our next video, which will examine the power of evolution.
All right.
We don't typically ponder the elegant.
So I'll just stop there. The rest of it goes into even more complexity within the cell, but he makes the point right off the bat about irreducible complexity using the idea of the flagellum. All right. Any questions about that before I move on? Yes, Jonathan.
So I've heard the argument about the flagellum before, and personally I think it's sound. Now I've seen some arguments against it because somebody had postulated an idea. Now I don't remember exactly who or what that idea was, but I remember hearing that they
know what it is.
Exactly, that they had figured out some sort of way that it could have evolved part by part and still worked.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I don't necessarily agree with them or believe that particular idea, but it seems that it is the flagellum is no longer considered irreducibly complex by a large number of scientific minds.
Yeah. And my understanding, and then follow up, is that that is in the theory state, but there's no current example. In other words, he showed about 8 different parts of the flagellum, universal joint, etc., and that there's a theory that, well, you could take the universal joint out and something else that serves the same function, but that there's no current example of that, and so I think it's in the idea stage, like this could have happened.
Yeah, and then there's also something called the type 2 secretion system, which is essentially like a needle that will also, by the way, what's your name?
I'm Jonathan.
Jonathan.
Nice to meet you.
You too. So essentially this secretion system sort of uses a similar tubule, and then it has like a mount, and then it has like a similar like pump, like a very, very simple pump that is able to secrete the like some kind of poison essentially. But and so it has a few parts in common with the flagellum, but it's missing a lot from the flagellum, and then it has other parts and stuff. And so I've heard some people say like, oh, if you have that, it's a little bit simpler. And then if you like add a whole bunch of parts later, then you end up with the flagellum. So that can be kind of an in-between. But there's problems like, for instance, that essentially it's kind of like a lion developing teeth before it develops legs.
Right.
And that it has to just stay stationary, which, that's kind of a problem in and of itself. But then the real kicker is that the kinds of creatures that we actually see that on are much more complex in other areas and it also, I think, requires proteins that are further down the line of evolution according to their own theories and everything. So it would have been developed later according to their theories, and so it doesn't really work. That's the only like in between I've ever heard of, but maybe you can look into it more and bring it up another time.
Yeah, and for a simple guy like me, I think about even just the human body and the way it's developed with what a coincidence. I have a left arm and a right arm that are the same size. I have 5 fingers on each hand, and then you get into other, eyes and ears and the symmetry of the body. And I think, how did that over time become the way that it is? Because it didn't have to be. It probably would have aided my survival if I would have had something different over here, like a club or a knife or sharp bone or something. And yet we all have this strange sort of symmetry, and I know that's not exactly that irreducible complexity, but it gets along the same sort of theme. But yeah, there are a lot of people that are opposed to this. but they mostly have theories and ideas that are kind of rescuing devices, we'd call them. Yeah, John?
Well, it's interesting that he thought of this. He wasn't trying to
Yeah,
come up with any theories. He's just trying to say, wow, this is really complex.
yeah,
And then, we'll figure it out.
yeah.
And then later,
yeah.
it's kind of like, what's the most likely? So I think those are two different
Yeah.
questions. Is there a way to say where it could be wrong versus what's the most likely?
Yeah, the most likely answer. Yeah, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So yes, go ahead, Chris.
Darwin wrote, not Darwin, Behe wrote a book, A Mousetrap for Darwin, is the name of the book.
Yeah,
And it is explicitly answering the critics. So he's dealing with, he goes one by one through all the things that had come up.
it's called A Mousetrap for Darwin.
A Mousetrap for Darwin is the book where he says why the critics, why their points don't hold water.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so that gives us, at least at the front end of the video, you saw the highly complex cell structure itself, and you saw the things going on and the DNA replicating itself. And the question ought to be, if you don't have a materialist presupposition, the question ought to be, who designed this, right? This doesn't just happen all on its own. So watch the rest of the video and see. Michael Behe's got a lot of other work on the Discovery website for free. So if you're interested in that. Now back to the syllogism. As I mentioned earlier, what word can be a little bit unclear, right? Design. So I want to help you. In Ratio Christi is about apologetics. It's applying knowledge, not just getting knowledge for knowledge's sake. So in your discussions with your friends and family and others that you meet, on campus or in your life, you may have a tough time defending this if you can't first define design. Okay? And so I like to use this particular definition for design. It's Behe's. There's a few definitions out there, some that are more technical, specified complexity, etc. I like this one, PAP. If you see purposeful arrangement of parts, you can be sure that there's a designer behind that somewhere, right? That this doesn't happen all by itself. Now let's test this out, all right? Is this designed? Naphtali says no, but he means yes. Yeah, we would all see, it's kind of elementary to look at things like this and say, okay, this is designed, but there's a lot of people that, let me just show you an example. Indulge me. This is an actual CNN headline from November 6, 2023, okay? Now, how do you think the editors of CNN justified this headline? What's that?
Could have.
Okay, there's a possibility. Could have. But even the suggestion.
Oh, and also shaped by the wind. I mean, obviously, it's decayed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that could have been.
Right, but they show the Sphinx and they say it could have been shaped by the wind, and they name the Sphinx, right? So I don't think it's too surprising to y'all that there's a presupposition of materialism, not just in the academia world, but in media as well, right? And do you think that there's either some intentional effort here, or it's just presupposed? This could happen. It's possible. Anything's possible. And so they're reinforcing that worldview in that headline, right? Now, this is a yarding. Okay, that's the technical name for it. It's also called mud lion. Now that puppy is shaped by the wind. Okay, these are all over the desert. So CNN knows the likelihood that the Sphinx was carved from a yarding. Let me go back to it. Okay? It was originally a yarding, and then it was carved by humans to be a sphinx. And they know that, and yet still they came up with that headline, right? Deceiving and trying to lead people astray. So anyway, now let's take a look at this. Designed? Right? We can see purposeful arrangement of parts there. You have to use parts in a broader sense, right? You're chipping off things to reveal parts, or you're chipping parts off. But could CNN claim this headline? They wouldn't do it. Why wouldn't they do it?
We saw it happen.
Ah, yeah. Because this is in our recognition of human purposeful design, right? The Sphinx is a little mysterious. We don't know exactly how they did it, what tools, when they did it. So they're preying on that uncertainty. They would never put this headline out there, okay? So thank you for the diversion. I try to keep my reticular activating system up for when I'm watching the media, and I would encourage you all to do the same thing. All right, so back on design. I'm walking through the woods of New Hampshire, and in the distance, I see something that looks odd to me, right? And initially, I'm thinking, probably intuitively, this doesn't look like it's a piece of nature, right? I get up to it, and I see this nice little bench. So you would all agree this is designed, very simple design. It's a simple arrangement of parts for a purpose. I was hiking in Oklahoma, and I saw this on this stone, these, symbols. And again, you would say that's designed. There was a mind behind that. Purposeful arrangement of parts, even if the parts are ink, right? Okay. How about this? Designed? Probably not, unless it's at Disney World or something like that, right? Where they do this great job of making things that are natural, but they make them, right? This is probably not designed. How about this? It's kind of weird to think of a cut through wood as being designed, but you can tell the purposeful arrangement of parts, i.e. I'm pulling parts out with a chainsaw to create a nice clean cut, right? So your intuition is good. Everybody's intuition is good on design, and yet you're told not to believe it a lot of times in the sciences. How about this one? This is a hole in a rock in the shape of a heart. This is actually about 3 miles from a house that I had in California, in Crestline, California, San Bernardino Mountains. Now, as far as we know, this is a naturally occurring and a coincidence that it's shaped like a heart. Similar, has anyone looked at a cloud before and you see an animal or a ship or something? Same kind of thing. It's a coincidence, right? The cloud did not form itself in the shape of the thing that you're seeing, and there was no other cause. It's purely a coincidence. So this is not a refutation of the idea of design being intuitive. You can rarely find coincidences in nature, but this rock formation is much different than, say, something created out of rock by Michelangelo. Yeah, John.
Yeah, it's an interesting example with the heart, because I think we have to be careful if we give too much evidence to look at everything's design versus really clear examples. Because they can go, well, if you're saying this is, what about that heart? But if it's super clear.
Yeah, that would be what I'd call a red herring. If somebody brought up something like that, I'd say that's a coincidence, unless you have some evidence that shows it's designed. You can't just assume it's not, designed in an intentional way. Jonathan?
Absolutely. What he's saying, not everything in nature is intentional. There is absolutely coincidence. I've been sitting here thinking, well, if, you know, that more than just on a large scale, I need to see something on a small scale in order to believe in intentional design on a universal scale. And by small scale, I don't mean a rock, a single rock, or the inside of a tree. I mean smaller than that, like cells. And even smaller than that, molecules. I was thinking that if we were discussing with an atheist or a Darwinist or what have you, I feel like most likely I would be asked the question, well, that doesn't, when talking on macro scales like this, that doesn't prove that it's designed. And then they would try to go to a smaller scale, like look at a leaf, right? And I would say, well, there's clearly a pattern, but that doesn't necessarily mean design. Patterns happen in nature everywhere by somewhat of a coincidence. And so that's why, responding to his point of saying, oh, everything's design, to an extent it is, because its very existence is, because molecules very clearly show purposeful parts.
Yeah, good point. You go all the way down to atoms and molecular and like the 40 trillion cells that you have in your body, and it becomes easier. But the reason I started here is just to be able to explain what design is and that it's intuitive, because you'll be told, and I'd like to hear from Justin if he's told that. I've reviewed the curricula of California for middle and high school, and they absolutely would tell you to your eyes are deceiving you if you see design in the cell or the DNA strand, and yet they wouldn't say it for this simple thing here. Yeah, Justin, have you have any experience in that, in somebody asking you, to kind of don't believe your eyes? Not as much. Yeah. If you, I'm just curious, if you, and anyone answer this question, if you would say to your biology, chemistry professor, hey, this looks like it was designed purposely to do this, it didn't just accidentally show up this way, do you think they'd look at you sideways? Yeah, Andreas?
One thing that I really like the way you're talking about, what design actually is and everything. And something I always think about that's always kind of weird is when I watch YouTube videos and about different scientific things, like sometimes with the cell. And they're always calling it the design, even though it's about evolution videos. But I notice if it's about a rock shape or a cloud, it's always about the shape. They never say the design.
Right. Good
it's always
point.
about the shape of the rock, the
Good
shape
point.
of the shape, because it doesn't have parts.
So their intuition is working as well.
Yeah, but if it's something with mechanisms, it's always called design.
You're going to see this a lot in Smithsonian and Nature and a lot of films on TV that are materialistic, and they believe in evolution and other mechanisms to create what we have here, and they'll use the word purpose and goal and design a lot because they're humans. They have the same intuition. So
evolution has designed this.
Yes, yeah. Even natural selection, nature has selected. It's okay. So purposeful arrangement of parts, and I there's a lot more to study in biology, and as Jonathan was saying, the small things that can really show design. I'll show you a resource at the end. I would highly recommend, if this is interesting to you, that you get Stephen Meyer's newest book, Return of the God Hypothesis, I think is the name of it. I didn't ask Grok to design that for me, but it probably was.
That's right. But
Okay.
That's still human intelligence going into training.
Yes, yeah. Okay, we've looked at small stuff. Yes.
Just get the name of the book again.
Yeah. Return of the God Hypothesis. Dr. Stephen Meyer. You could probably buy it used now for, I'm thinking, $9 to $10.
I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this question, but I see the definition of design, purposeful arrangement of parts. So what if we have someone at the table that argues that, it's not purposeful, therefore it's not designed, like they don't believe like it was purposeful.
Yeah, they don't believe it's purposeful.
Yeah, they might accuse us of kind of sneaky
Yeah.
perception of like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think where I would go with them is I'd grab my iPhone or I'd grab something else, like a pair of glasses, and just say, do you think this was purposely arranged? Are there parts that was purposely arranged? This, that. Okay, so you see that, and now you see a human cell, and why don't you see the purposeful arrangement of parts there? I might ask that question innocently. I don't know if anyone has any other ideas. Jonathan?
I definitely think you're getting to it. I think the idea there would be to redefine purposeful in that case, because in this case, they would assume by purposeful you meant it was intentionally placed there, but that's not what we mean by purposeful, even though it actually is. What purposeful actually means in design is that it serves a purpose. It plays a function.
That's a good point.
And if it were to be removed, that function would no longer be carried out.
Right.
And so if they assume that you mean intentionally put there by an intelligent being, whether God or a human or something else, you need to let them know that's not necessarily what I mean. I just mean that it serves a function.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to say it.
So we could even rephrase the statement as like an arrangement of parts serving a purpose, but even though it's not as clean.
Yeah. No, I think so. I think that's a good way to say it. And at the end of the day, somebody's either aligned with their intuition or they're not aligned with it. And I would try to get to that edge. Like what is there anything else that they claim that looks designed but isn't, you know? And there's, we're going to talk about one next. Yeah, John.
One thing B was talking about is just asking a lot of questions. I just encourage people, I don't think we have to argue that as much as at the very least ask questions to help them think through it. And I mean, there could be an argument later, there might be a video that's a better argument than anything we could do. But if you can have that magical moment of helping with questions, we don't necessarily need to try to do too much work there as much as trying to draw that out. So.
Yeah, you're right, John. That's one of our fundamentals, is if you really want to change somebody and influence them, the question will work much better than the statement, you know? And if you can get permission to make the statement later on after a few questions, then you're really scored, you know, that's a triple right there. So, all right. Now we've been talking about kind of small stuff, the concept of design. Now let's talk about big stuff, because remember the syllogism said biology and the universe are highly complex in design. So let's talk about the universe now, and that is called the fine-tuning argument. Now this argument, more than even the biological design argument, has convinced many scientists to walk away from atheism. Now listen to this real closely. The basic premise of the fine-tuning argument is that the probabilities of a life-permitting universe existing on its own with so finely tuned constants is practically zero. Okay, so the probability that a life-permitting universe, the one we're in, the one that we can study and see, existing on its own with these finely tuned constants is practically zero. All right? Keep that in mind. Now, when I talk about low probabilities, I'm not talking about like winning the lottery low probabilities, which is like 1 in 10 to the 9th, 9 zeros. I'm talking about probabilities that have been calculated that are like 1 in 10 to the 170. Okay, these are practically zero in our consideration. So I'm going to play another video. This one's 6 minutes, and this is from Reasonable Faith, and it'll explain this theory at a high level with some specific examples.
From galaxies and stars, down to atoms and subatomic particles, the very structure of our universe is determined by these numbers. These are the fundamental constants and quantities of the universe. Scientists have come to the shocking realization that each of these numbers has been carefully dialed to an astonishingly precise value, a value that falls within an exceedingly narrow, life-permitting range. If any one of these numbers were altered by even a hair's breadth, no physical, interactive life of any kind could exist anywhere. There'd be no stars, no life, no planets, no chemistry. Consider gravity, for example. The force of gravity is determined by the gravitational constant. If this constant varied by just 1 in 10 to the 60th parts, none of us would exist. To understand how exceedingly narrow this life-permitting range is, imagine a dial divided into 10 to the 60th increments. To get a handle on how many tiny points on the dial this is, compare it to the number of cells in your body, or the number of seconds that have ticked by since time began. If the gravitational constant had been out of tune by just one of these infinitesimally small increments, the universe would either have expanded and thinned out so rapidly that no stars could form and life couldn't exist, or it would have collapsed back on itself with the same result: no stars, no planets, and no life. Or consider the expansion rate of the universe. This is driven by the cosmological constant. A change in its value by a mere 1 part in 10 to the 120th parts would cause the universe to expand too rapidly or too slowly. In either case, the universe would again be life prohibiting. Or another example of fine-tuning. If the mass and energy of the early universe were not evenly distributed to an incomprehensible precision of 1 part in 10 to the 10 to the 123rd, the universe would be hostile to life of any kind. The fact is, our universe permits physical, interactive life only because these, and many other numbers, have been independently and exquisitely balanced on a razor's edge. Wherever physicists look, they see examples of fine-tuning. The remarkable fact is that the values of these numbers seem to have been very finely adjusted to make possible the development of life. If anyone claims not to be surprised by the special features that the universe has, he's hiding his head in the sand. These special features are surprising and unlikely. What is the best explanation for this astounding phenomenon? There are 3 live options. The fine-tuning of the universe is due to either physical necessity, chance, or design. Which of these options is the most plausible? According to this alternative, the universe must be life-permitting. The precise values of these constants and quantities could not be otherwise. But is this plausible? Is a life-prohibiting universe impossible? Far from it. It's not only possible, it's far more likely than a life-permitting universe. The constants and quantities are not determined by the laws of nature. There's no reason or evidence to suggest that fine-tuning is necessary. How about chance? Did we just get really, 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 really lucky? No. The probabilities involved are so ridiculously remote as to put the fine-tuning well beyond the reach of chance. So, in an effort to keep this option alive, some have gone beyond empirical science and opted for a more speculative approach, known as the multiverse. They imagine a universe generator that cranks out such a vast number of universes that, odds are, life-permitting universes will eventually pop out. However, there's no scientific evidence for the existence of this multiverse. It cannot be detected, observed, measured, or proved. And the universe generator itself would require an enormous amount of fine-tuning. Furthermore, small patches of order are far more probable than big ones. So the most probable observable universe would be a small one, inhabited by a single, simple observer. But what we actually observe is the very thing that we should least expect: a vast, spectacularly complex, highly ordered universe, inhabited by billions of other observers. So even if the multiverse existed, which is a moot point, it wouldn't do anything to explain the fine-tuning. Given the implausibility of physical necessity or chance, the best explanation for why the universe is fine-tuned for life may very well be it was designed that way. A common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super-intellect monkeyed with physics, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. The numbers one calculates from the facts seem to me so overwhelming as to put this conclusion almost beyond question. There is for me powerful evidence that there is something going on behind it all. It seems as though somebody has fine-tuned nature's numbers to make the universe. The impression of design is overwhelming. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge.
Okay. Any questions on that? Did you pick up on the necessity, the argument from necessity, and how to manage that? Okay, we'll have a challenge question on that in a minute. John?
With the multiverse idea, do you know what people would put forth as, I mean, it clearly brings up tons more questions.
Right.
Is there...
Yeah, it's right now it's science fiction. So it's somebody imagining a rescuing device that says, okay, this is my idea of what caused all of this, but it's just an idea. It's like Marvel Comics, you know, it's as good as that, but they rest on it and they think, well, maybe someday we'll figure it out. That's where it's at, honestly. Yeah, it's easily refutable, but a lot of people hang on to it.
Which is interesting. I mean, they have the image there, but it's interesting that the explanation ends up being super complex.
Yeah.
It's just like an alternate way of saying somebody designed it.
Yes, yeah, that's what I mean. It's really, there's no evidence for it, and it requires complexity that they can't explain either. Who caused that, right? And who designed that? They even have a name for that big machine. It's called an Oort cloud. So somebody named it.
Not the, I thought that was like...
Oh, you're right. That's for comets. Yeah. So maybe they haven't named it yet. Yeah. All right. I'll keep moving on. So back to our syllogism. Every design has a designer. Universe and biological life show highly complex design. Therefore, the universe and biological life have a designer. All right? So our job as apologists is to kind of remember these. And so in conversations with people, like John was pointing out, we could say, well, you know, my understanding is biological life is really complex. It shows a design. But help me understand if you know better, you know? And then you can get people thinking. So does anyone want to take a crack at that syllogism? These are really helpful to kind of keep in the back of your mind. Anybody? Go ahead, Jacob.
Okay. It was like all designs have a designer. The universe shows incredibly complex design in both space and biology. Therefore, the universe requires a very intelligent designer.
I cram those two together. This is my custom sort of two-in-one syllogism because I think we can get the concept of fine-tuning, big, and biological design, small. We can get those together and use them in the same argument. So, all right, any further questions on the syllogism? There's a lot of evidence that can unpack further if you want to go down the rabbit hole on this. And believe me, it's fun. And again, I would point you to Dr. Stephen Meyer's book. I'll show you a copy of it in a minute. Now, adding to the characteristics of this cause or this being that not only caused the universe, but created it with great and complex design. What other characteristics could we add to that list? I'll throw intelligent out there to begin with, okay? And these are, I had a friend today, a skeptic friend, say, you can't claim any of these characteristics, right? And I said, but we can easily deduce its cause and effect. We can look at the effects, that's science, and we can go back and deduce a cause in the characteristics of a cause, right, Josh?
Could intentional be one?
Intentional? I think intentional is one, yeah.
Creative?
Creative, for sure. Huh? Yeah. Anybody else?
Precise.
Precise. Oh, yeah. No doubt. No doubt.
Dramatic.
Dramatic. Ah. Yeah, you know, let me just throw a little factoid out here. You know that I'm told, okay, not a scientist, but I'm told if you take an atom and you measure the distance between the center of the atom and the outside of the atom, okay, proportionally, that is larger than the distance from the center of the universe all the way to the edge of the universe. So it means an atom has more space in it. You know, it's like this piece of metal is filled with atoms that have more space in it proportionally than the entire universe.
When you say proportionally,
mind-blowing.
You mean
proportion to the size of the atom.
I see.
The size of the atom and the proportion of space that's in it is larger than the universe proportionally.
Okay.
Isn't that mind-blowing? So when somebody said, you said precise, and then you said dramatic. To me, that's dramatic.
Yeah.
It's like, would we have expected, the atom to have that sort of proportionality? No. Wow. Dramatic. All right, let me throw some up here. These are the ones we already came up with. And I think we could add to these intelligent. I would put orderly there as well. Intentional, like you said. Precise. Creative.
We get to like beauty, or is that we're not there yet?
We're not there yet. But, well, super engineer, I think, is also. But beauty. There's no doubt that creative and beauty are in that space. I mean, just who can't look at
ugly people that make beautiful things. So.
That could be, but that could be subjective too.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. I think I'll add some to the list. You're intentional, precise. Those are really good. Okay. Now I want to show you some examples. This is very powerful. Okay, you have a powerful argument here that all on its own, people like, as I mentioned earlier, Anthony Flew, Francis Collins, and are converting to theism all on their own because they can't deny what's here. But then you have a ton of other guys who haven't converted, like Fred Hoyle, who say things like you would think they would convert, You saw him in the video. A common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super intellect is monkeyed with physics. Yeah, that would be a common sense interpretation, as well as chemistry and biology, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking out in nature. By the way, he coined the term Big Bang, okay, in 1957. But Hoyle also said this. There was a coherent plan. At the end of his life, he said this. There's a coherent plan for the universe, although I admit I have no idea what it is. Okay? Anthony Flew, I've talked about him a few times. For much of his career, he was not just an advocate, he was a fanatical advocate for atheism. He wrote over 50 books defending atheism. Yet, at the end of his life, in his book, he said, why do I believe this life originated in a divine source, given that I expounded atheism for half a century? Well, here's the answer. He says science spotlights 3 dimensions of nature that point to God. The first is the fact that nature obeys laws. The second is the dimension of life, of intelligently organized and purpose-driven beings, which arose from matter. And the third is the very existence of nature, which is like the cosmological argument, right? Why is there something rather than nothing? So even this hardened vet of atheism used the fine-tuning argument to get there. And of course, Francis Collins, his book, The Language of God, but even some current contemporary, this guy's still an atheist, Thomas Nagel. Danny and I have talked about him a lot. He's taking a lot of punches right now from the materialistic, atheistic, scientific community, because he wrote in his book, Mind and Cosmos, why the materialist, neo-Darwinian conception of nature is almost certainly false. That's the subtitle. It basically stunned the academic world because he was held in such high respect and stature. Another one from Nagel. He says, I realize that such doubts will strike many people as outrageous, the doubts that he has now about materialism. But that is because almost everyone in our secular culture has been browbeaten into regarding the reductive research program as sacrosanct on the ground that anything else would not be science. Okay? He's being intellectually honest near the end of his life, which is a good thing. And then he's got more quotes as well. I would be willing to bet that the present right-thinking consensus will someday be laughable. Okay? So, in closing, I want to show you resources. This is the book I've referred to now 3 times, Return of the God Hypothesis, Stephen C. Meyer. What I like about it is Meyer's written several books, but now he packages 3 different concepts, geology, paleontology, along with cosmology, along with biology. And these 3 are nicely packaged in this book, along with a lot of philosophical concepts. This is Antony Flou's book. I read it. I think it was really good to see his honesty there. This was recommended to me. I haven't read it, but Confessions of a French Atheist, How God Hijacked My Quest to Disprove the Christian Faith. It's in my library. I just haven't read it yet. This is a classic. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. Language of God, Francis Collins. And then in the group chat, I'll put this booklet, Does God Exist? And Darwin's Doubt. All right? Let me close with 2 passages from the Bible. Isaiah 42:26. Lift up your eyes on high and see who has created these stars. The one who leads forth their host by number. He calls them all by name. Because of the greatness of his might and the strength of his power, not one of them is missing. Now, just because a man named Isaiah says it, doesn't make it true, but God has given us eyes to see, and we've got evidence that helps us show that God's creation is highly likely, right? It's highly likely coming from a creator. And as St. Paul says, we ourselves are wonderfully made and we're, a masterpiece of creation. I would also leave you with this, Romans 1. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Because that which is known about God is evident within them, for God made it evident to them. Purposeful arrangement of parts. We can spot design, right? For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power, and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse. So we do have eyes to see and minds to reason. We are accountable. And this is an apologetic tip that you can start to lean into this space with some of the people that you're talking to, because as Paul says here, if you see design but intentionally deny it, that's not only the definition of insanity, it's against the great designer, and his wrath is real. It's not just an Old Testament thing. God's wrath is real. It's in the grand narrative. Jesus talks about it a lot. All right, so let's make sure our apologetic approach emphasizes the positions of non-Christians and the position they're in vis-a-vis their Creator. All right, we've got a few minutes left. First objection. There's a multiverse, and we happen to be living in the one universe that supports life. What are some questions we could ask? We know all the statements we could make. What are some questions we could ask?
Why do you think that there's a multiverse?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you mean by multiverse? Which is kind of in that same space.
Do you have evidence to support your claim?
Yes. Yeah. How did you come to that conclusion, basically? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you read that in a comic book? No, I can't.
John.
I think you could ask too, like, you've thought about this, have you weighed it against other things, or what's maybe the thing that causes you to doubt that the most, or something like that? Do you ever doubt that?
Yeah, Greg Koukল's third stage of questioning is a question that makes a point. And so you could say something like, to John's point, you could say, do you think that's the most likely and the most reasonable, answer to the question? Right? Is it reasonable? So we know it's not reasonable, even just by the math, right?
But definitely the other ones first, like
yes.
Very open.
Yes.
More, but then.
Yeah, tell me more. What do you mean by that? The thing I want to bring up about whether it's the multiverse or we've heard a lot of this in our Ratio Christi meetings, is you've got somebody usually sitting in the back of the room and they'll talk about some wild-eyed idea and they'll eventually say, anything is possible. Okay? I want you to take anything is possible thinking and you should have a red alarm going off in your head. Because what they're really saying, and I think that Neil Manson says it real well here, unlimited probabilistic resources. In other words, if I dream up anything is possible resources, they ensure that not only we will never know anything, but also we have no rational basis for preferring one thing to another. Okay? Also Frank Turek and Norm Geisler, the multiple universe theory is so broad that any event can be explained away by it. We gave some examples of that last week. You could think of a universe where, I sneakily take Jacob's laptop, okay, because he's off talking to you guys and I take it. And then he accuses me of taking it and I say, you're in a universe where you are delusional about me taking your laptop. Okay, you got to go to another universe where I actually take it, but we can't be in that universe. Anything is possible when you go down this rabbit trail. Okay, things only look designed. That's what Richard Dawkins says in his book, The Blind Watchmaker. What do you say to that? What questions would you ask? Because this is out there. You're going to hear this. Go ahead.
Look to make assumptions about them ever?
Say that again, Naf.
Do you use the way things look to make assumptions about them ever?
Yeah.
Which, we have to do that all the time.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Mm-hmm. How else? Yeah, go ahead, Audrey, and then Princess.
Maybe I would try to understand what they mean by design.
Uh-huh.
Make sure we're on the same
Yeah.
definition and then work from there.
Yeah, good point. You could say something like, when I think of design, I'm thinking one thing, but you may be thinking something else. What is it that you're thinking? Princess. Same thing. You guys are like on the same page. All right. Here's another one. Time and chance can account for the complexity in the universe.
No, because you look at the numbers of the universal constants, and then you look at the amount of time they believe we've had in existence, and you don't have enough time for those universal constants to have formed.
Yeah. So you could ask, well, how much time do you think it would take to, and then, well, there's not enough time. Actually, the debate we had last year, that was Jacob's point about one protein, developing one protein by time and chance. There's not enough time in the history of the world many times over. Yeah, good point.
In the Darwinian timeline.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and then he tried to say, well, with millions of years. I was like, no, I already said within your time scale.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So one of the things my mind jumps to here is the second law of thermodynamics, which states that order is moving to disorder. Okay? So if order is moving to disorder in all things, how can we reverse that just by adding in more time? Huh? Yeah, yeah.
Time is the enemy.
Time is the enemy, exactly. Princess.
Would it be okay to say that time and chance also account for the cooked food in your fridge?
Account for the what?
The cooked food in your fridge?
Tell me more.
I mean, because it's
Like how it got there?
How does it come? How do spices get together?
Uh-huh.
How do you supply heat for those spices to blend? And then how does it get to the point of
So
being
time-
edible and it's in the fridge as well?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
How does that, because it's going from disorder to order.
Right.
That's not possible.
Yeah. Jonathan, you were going to add to
I
that.
was just more clarifying
Yeah.
that you're saying that time and chance doesn't cook your dinner. You can't put your ingredients on your island and then wait for your food to
Yeah.
It's not a mechanism for putting things together.
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you put it as a question, you could ask, can you give me an example of anything that becomes more complex?
Yeah.
By giving you time and chance.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Well, and I can also point out with computer science, like we can run simulations,
Mm-hmm.
and like there are some algorithms that use chance and use
Yeah.
multiple iterations, but it's very, very limited what it can do, even with like insanely fast iterations. Like it can't accomplish very much.
Yeah, good point. Norm Geisler and Frank Turek have an example similar to this in their book where let's say you have 50 pieces of paper that show an American flag, 50 pieces cut up, and you drop them from 1,000 feet in an airplane. Okay, they're going to fall, and there's going to be a certain sense of disorder, but they're going to be, now go up to 10,000 feet or 30,000 feet and drop those. You're increasing your time and your chance, and they're just going to be further and further in disarray. Right? So that's their example. Let's take one more on. We've talked about God of the gaps. This one. No, sorry, this one. Imagine a rain puddle, noticing how well it fits into its hole, and concluding that the hole must have been made especially for it. You silly fine-tuners, you. You're just sitting back with your perception of the universe and saying, oh, isn't that nice? The universe was made especially for me and for us.
I feel like at least so far, the biggest thing I can come up with is, well, yeah, that's kind of the point. But if we're speaking to someone who is more materialistically minded and is solely focused on the science, saying, yes, it was by an intelligent and loving God, is going to derail the conversation.
Yeah, it'll derail it. There's a way, Andreas, go ahead.
Well, most of the time when I see puddles, they overflow, or they're not completely filled. You have to get a puddle to be exactly right is actually hard.
Yeah.
So they're talking about basically a universe that overflows, or that doesn't have enough stuff in it.
About like overflow
Uh-huh. Yeah. Keep going, keep going. This is out there. There's a lot of memes. This is actually Doug Adams' puddle theory. Nick's brought it up last year in class. John, and then Ramey, and then Jacob.
I mean, I might just ask, like, help me understand the parallel.
Right.
I mean, obviously there would be a few parallels.
Yeah.
But walk me through, I mean, obviously there's a very basic one that
Right.
water happens to fit in there, but that doesn't, we're obviously not saying that.
Yeah.
Just that it's that simple.
Yeah, what John is saying, so there's the fallacy of equivocation. So somebody's automatically saying that a puddle is equal to the fine-tuning of the universe, right? Or some sort of comparison like that. So ask them to make that more clear to you.
Sounds like the idea is or the point is that people formed to fit the world that we're created in.
Or we're observing. What they're saying is, we're just observing. We're like that little puddle that says, oh, I'm so comfy in my little hole. It was made just for me. That's the point. That's the satire in this. Ramey.
Yeah, I would just point out or ask them, like, what evidence do you have that's true, that it's necessary for it to be that way? Because, you know, if you're the type of person that they're like, oh, well, all things are possible. And, like, it could be possible that it could have formed a different way, or the universe, the elements could have formed a different way.
Yeah. So this gets into the necessity argument, right? Jacob and then John.
Yeah, I think that there's kind of two aspects to this argument. One is the idea that that it had to be this whole, and so we actually essentially there only is one whole, and it's shaped this way because which, by the way, we already discussed that there's no evidence for that.
Right.
And then the other idea is that if it was shaped differently, then maybe the life could have just formed, right? Like the way that water kind of just conforms to the whole, it would have just formed differently to work with this other kind of system. But the problem is that we've already shown that with many of these fine-tuning variables, that the universe wouldn't have even formed at all, or that the stars would have all been destroyed, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And then there's also just a huge assumption that you can come up with another way for life to exist. It doesn't require viscosity and the laws of chemistry the way that they are. So that's
Yeah. And last one, Nathaniel.
I mean, I would ask, how do you know it's a rain puddle? What if someone intentionally did that to collect water in the road?
Yeah. Getting more clarity on what they're saying. Yeah, this is kind of a tough one because it's confusing to think through, but it's out there a lot, and it's I would say it's the main argument in a satirical way against the fine tuning. The first thing I would do is just say, rain puddles don't notice anything. So we're talking about intelligent life here, doing a fine-tuning argument, and a rain puddle that somehow has a mind and notices, so immediately it's a disjointed, it's in sort of a straw man equivocation place. Furthermore, the analogy suggests that we're trying to explain why this universe, but remember, that's not the goal of fine-tuning. Fine-tuning is to say why any life-permitting universe would exist. Okay, so there's a difference between the two. Okay, so we get into that equivocation argument. I think the best analogy is the man who is set to be executed by gunfire. And in some countries, they'll line up 100 because they really want to put a lot of bullets in this guy. And they all shoot and they all miss. Okay, expert marksman. Now, what's the likelihood of that happening? Very slim. So he has a right to ask, why did they all miss? My life is permitted in spite of the odds. The odds are much greater, and this is the argument from necessity, the odds are much greater that we have a life non-permitting universe. That's what we ought to have, not a life-permitting universe. So keep that in your mind. The odds are really stacked against us. Okay? All right, so we will close it up with this. As we talk about apologetics and getting our knowledge into play, I suggest you start using some of these statements with your friends. The first one is not a question, but it is a bit of a vague sort of confidence that you just don't have a personal blind faith. You have excellent reasons to believe that God exists. Okay, that could be a question that creates some inquisitiveness from the person you're talking to, because they're not used to religious folks talking about reasons. Okay? And then also, I think you can use some of the next three, hey, I'm open-minded, tell me more about your idea about puddles or multiverses or whatever, and you just kind of pull them through that a little bit in a respectful way. I'm not persuaded. You could say, I'm really not persuaded, but do you have any more evidence? That's a kinder way of saying, show me what you got. And then you can always just reconfirm what they're saying. And I do this a lot with the guy that I'm on GroupMe now. Are you saying that, And usually he'll either say, no, I've misunderstood, or he'll redirect because I took the candy coating off of what he just said, and he doesn't really like the way I said it, although I confirmed my understanding, So I just want to give these to you as you start to think more about your apologetics. So now you have two simple syllogisms to help you in your apologetics. Be curious, use intriguing comments like that, and you will change hearts and minds, give you a chance to give a gospel message. All right? Any final questions or thoughts? John?
Just one quick thing. I was just thinking as you're going, so many people will meet on campus who have never even thought about this at all.
Yeah.
Not that they haven't thought about any of it, but just see, we're swimming in the opposite viewpoint. So then we're trying to think both sides. Like we have our faith and then we think this. Most people wouldn't have to do that. So just remembering, one, that maybe never talk through it. So we gracious. But
Go slow.
Also, we're not mainly arguing with Fred Hoyle or somebody like that. Most of the time, I'd say probably 90% plus, they're going to say to some of these thoughts, oh, that's really interesting. I've never thought through that. Or maybe watch a video or something like that. So
that's a good point.
It's an encouragement just to get out there and have that conversation. A lot of people would be open to it, and they just they'll be intrigued with it.
That's a really good point. I think the comments and the conversations we had at the table today that were just prompted by the simple question of, does God exist? Right? Was the universe created? Yeah. Is in that space. It's an innocent question, and it creates good conversation. So, all right, thank you. I'm a little bit over. Thank you for staying. Let's close up with prayer. And Ms. Olma, would you mind praying? Thank you.
I just want to say thank you, Lord, for gathering us all here today to learn more about you and more about your design. I pray, Lord, that we take the knowledge that we've received today and think deeper into them and research more into them. I pray, oh Lord, that you put us in the path of the people who need to hear this from us. I pray you continue to use us as your vessel, Lord, and I pray you continue to just give us each day to know you more. And I pray that as we each go back to our houses, we all go and we all go safely, and we all have good night's rest in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Two quick announcements. There's the Women in Apologetics Conference, which is coming up the 26th and 27th. Ratio Christi will cover $99 of the $129. So any ladies that haven't gone or any friends of yours, we've got about 5 or 6 people. So there'll be a group growing already if you want to join. And talk to Ramey about that, okay? 26th and 27th, evening of the 26th Friday, and pretty much all day on the 27th.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we have a second activity also on the 27th. And so those of you that aren't going to the Women in Apologetics Conference, this is called Serious Science Talks. It's at ICR, Institute for Creation Research, and it's at their Discovery Center, which is a really cool museum. It's about 30 miles south of here, and we'll get a caravan of cars going. Free lunch, 90-minute discussions with some of the scientists at ICR. They're all PhD level scientists, and you'll get to see the museum as well. Free lunch, riding back and forth, good conversation. So if anyone's interested in that, look for the announcement on GroupMe. In fact, we'll put a poll out for that, and then you could just click and say that you want to join that, and then we'll have a separate GroupMe to kind of keep everyone together. That's the 27th as well. Yes.
How much is that one?
That one is free.
Oh.
ICR is free. We like free, yeah. And I think we'd be leaving probably around 10:30 to get there, and we'd probably be back around 2:30. Okay? That's the 27th Saturday. Yes?
Tell them about Hillary coming.
Oh, yes, yeah. We're going to have Hillary Morgan Ferrer here on October 13th. She is the founder and current president of Mama Bear Apologetics, and the daughter of Chris and Alice Morgan. And so we're really going to be blessed by her presence here October 13th. So we'll talk more about that. We'll have a flyer out. So thank you. All right, y'all. There's more snacks back there. Thank you, Alice, for the snacks. And those cookies are awesome. And looking forward to seeing you next week. What do we have on the docket?
Oh, discussion.
Discussion, yes. That's a discussion time. For those of you that hadn't been here before, we'll get in a circle. We'll discuss the 3 previous meetings.